Okay, well, thanks, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to our class. We're gonna, uh, we're slowly getting into the nitty gritty of the molecular relationship. Some of the things we'll cover in this class will be, we've covered partially before, and then we'll be going in into how the molecular relationship works, which is should be the most interesting part of the whole thing. But the first step in creating a human molecule is to stabilize the male-female relationship uh, in no matter how it exists, whether it be working together as partners or working together in marriage, because to create the molecular relationship for a human molecule that is something that can be accepted by the hierarchy in which to be an externalization of itself, it has to reach close to the 0 point in energy. And this is one of the advantages of meditation. Each person is out of balance to a certain degree. And when a person enters into prayer or meditation, they try to go beyond the physical to the point that they're not influenced by that physical pull where the energy is off balance. And this helps us to get in better communication with the God within, our higher self, our souls. So this is 0 point is interesting concept to consider. And with a molecule of 24, if we can have 12 females and 12 males that balance each other off so that their energies is close to the 0 point, then it can reach a point to where it's possible to draw down the pure spiritual energy. And then if the masters see that this is an appropriate vehicle, they can uh, link it up to themselves, and it can become a channel like the molecule was on the day of Pentecost. Um, can anyone here tell me what happened on the day of Pentecost? Curtis, I know you know what happened on the
Well,
day
the
of
Spirit of the
Pentecost.
Lord
What
came
happened?
down. Jesus was resurrected, and
I think it was
there was a reconnection with Spirit, and angels came and walked among men, and miracles were performed, and because they had reconnected with the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah. And when they had the meeting, fire appeared over their heads. So they had a actual spiritual fire descend upon them. So anyway, the prime cause of disharmony in this world is a lack of balance of the male-female energy. And we see this with our political situation now. We have a lack of balance in politics like we've never seen before. And this is because the one side is heavily centered on the mind, the mental energy, or the male energy, and the other on the female energy, which is interesting in the way that they vote. Also, the Democrats, for instance, always more females vote Democrat than the males, and with Republicans, more males vote for them than the females. So the conservative side represents the male energy, and the liberal side represents the female energy. And because both sides have shifted in recent times, where they're more heavily centered on being out of balance on the left and the right, the male and the female, they see each other as opposing each other. Whereas if they were to move toward the center and be more balanced in their energy, they wouldn't be fighting so much. It's like in a relationship, a romantic relationship between a male and female, they have to understand each other because males and females are definitely different. They think different. And so but we're attracted to each other. But so what you have to do to make the male-female relationship work is not focus totally on your energy and them on their energy and see yourself as enemies, but understanding the two energies and coming to the center together, balancing each other off so the energies are in balance. So one of the problems with our system is we usually have one party or the other completely dominate. And when one party completely dominates, then the other party has a strong grievance and then they attack. Now, if both parties have kind of equal power, then they both don't feel as strong of a grievance and there's not as much attack. But in the United States, the past few years, we've had them gravitate to one side or the other, and one side always feels like the other is using power unjustly. That would be like in a marriage where, for instance, either the husband or wife completely dominates and gets their way all the time, and the other person feels a grievance because they never get their way. And so when this happens in a marriage, the marriage does not proceed harmoniously. And this is the way the world is right now, is we have the two sides focused on the two energies, either the male or the female energy, too much where they see the other side as being an enemy rather than a missing part of themselves. And so if the two sides can balance each other off, this is important. And the balancing of energies goes not only just for single male females, but then groups and larger groups. As we explained earlier, it's behind the creation of everything there is. They're just two energies, the plus, the minus, male, female, sending, receiving, and so on. It's interesting that to consider the difference in the male-female energies. One of the main differences is the male energy is the sending energy, and the female is the receiving. And there's nothing that illustrates more this than the actual symbolism of our physical bodies themselves. In reproduction, the male sends the sperm into the female and the female receives. So we have the sending and the receiving. Well, what's interesting is there's millions of sperm sent, but only one out of many millions actually is 100% accepted by the female. Shows that the female is very selective in what she's willing to receive. But if the female is willing to add her receiving energy and actually receive from the male, then magic happens. And the egg gets impregnated, and a magical burst like a big bang exists in miniature form. And the fact that your life began as a big bang and an explosion of multiplication of cells and tiny lives to make a greater life. So it's interesting how that works. And it's interesting to to focus on that principle. And the principle is that when the female actually receives from the male, she has power to produce magic, a magical creation. Have you ever, if you're a male, just think of sometime you've met, you maybe fallen in love, met a female that really believes that you can do something. How does that make you feel? Anyone, any guy have a comment on that, how it made him feel?
Empowered.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you have a lot more power, doesn't it, Curtis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conquer the world. Can do anything you can set your mind to that she can agree on.
Yeah, I don't think females realize their power in that regard, how much power they have to inspire the male energy to materialize something. But if you're in a, say, a bad marriage or a bad relationship, male and female, and the female doesn't believe in you, then it makes it a lot harder to accomplish anything. But if you have that belief, it can be like a magical thing, just as magical as when the female accepts a sperm. But the females are fussy. They just don't accept anything. It has to be something that they register, something that they think is good. So if you're in a close association with if you're a guy in a close association with a female, think, what what do I want to accomplish that I can share with her that she will accept and embrace? Because if she embraces it, then that will give much more power to manifest it than if she doesn't embrace it. So that's an interesting thought. And so that this tremendous power exists.
Hey, that's like when Jesus used that principle before he raised Lazarus from the dead. He asked, I believe probably Mary, "You believe I can do this?" And she said, "Yea, Lord, I believe." And because she believed in him, it augmented his power to fulfill that.
Right. Right. And he says, do you believe I can do this? I mean, he wanted that belief, and he used that belief to perform his greatest miracle outside of the resurrection. And do you remember who was responsible for his very first miracle? Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, he turned water into wine.
Yeah. And who asked him to do that?
Well, probably Mary,
Right. His mother,
his mother.
another female. So his very first miracle was in response to a female asking for it. Okay. And then on the resurrection, who were the first witnesses of it?
Women.
All right, females were the first witnesses. And who disbelieved at first?
And who what?
Who disbelieved in the resurrection first?
Oh, men. The men
Yeah, the
did.
men.
Doubting
The
Thomas.
women went and told the men didn't believe it.
Well, they were all gathered together in this little hut, 11 of them. And when he appeared, they were frightened and thought they had seen a ghost. And because they were so unbelieving, he called them fools. He said, "Fools and slow of heart to not believe everything that I said I could do."
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm going to have to go back to the women.
Okay, there's many correspondences to the male-female energy, like radiance and magnetism. Men are radiant, they are active, we can see what they're doing, they don't, they can't hide anything even if they try hardly, you know. My wife is laughing right now because she knows I can't get away with anything. but women are magnetic and associated with magnetism and gravity, which is invisible. but it's a tremendous power they have. But women are always complaining, boy, I do work so hard and I do all these things and nobody notices. That's because you can't see gravity. You can't see magnetism, but it's there and it's a tremendous power, and it's becoming more recognized as we progressed into the Aquarian age. And women will eventually get their recognition. But to get it completely, they need to also understand their power, because many women are deceived into thinking that they can have more power by being in the male energy where they're more visible. But to maximize the female power, they need to work with the invisible energy. And it will be recognized as time goes on as just as potent, or more so than, well, not more so, they're both equal, as the male radiant energy. So think of, look at the universe. We see the radiant energy, which is the sun, the stars. Whoop, gotta mute you there. Mosh, you need to go on mute there. You were making some noise there. And there we go. So anyway, you look at the stars and the sun, that's all male energy that we see. But what's holding everything together? What's holding everything together is gravity and that which pulls the outward inward. Without gravity, we wouldn't have any form in the universe. And so you can ask yourself, what's the most important, the radiance we see or the gravity that holds everything together? Okay, they're both of equal importance, because the universe couldn't exist without both of them. It's interesting, in the biblical story of Adam and Eve, Eve actually dominated Adam with her desire for the forbidden experience. The female energy takes us into matter, and the male energy takes us out. So Eve took us into matter by desiring the forbidden fruit. And what the female energy does is it pulls us into experience. It pulls us into experience. And as it pulls us into experience, the mind of the male thinks, boy, I don't know if we want to go there. That's some crazy stuff could happen if we do this. Well, the female energy doesn't think about the repercussions so much. She just wants the experience. And so Eve wanted the experience of the eating of the fruit to see what it was like. So she ate it. And then Adam thought, well, man, I guess I got to go alone, because I'm going to be all alone without Eve if Eve gets kicked out of the garden. And so I guess I might as well plunge into the experience with her. Whatever happens, happens. So Adam also partakes of the apple. So Eve took them into the experience. And the female energy takes us into experience. And we need that to happen in order to have all these experiences. A lot of them we wouldn't have chosen if we just would have chosen them in advance. Think of the things that's happened in your life that have been difficult. But once it's over, you wouldn't trade it for anything, would you? You think of the difficult things, the experiences you've been pulled into in your life. After it's all over, and especially after you've learned from it, you think, boy, I wouldn't trade that learning for anything. And this is why we need the female energy. It pulls us into the experience, sometimes against our will, sometimes against our common sense, but pulls us into it. And it turns out we learn quite a bit from it. And then when we've gone through all the experiences that are usable, then the male energy pulls us out of the experience, back to the pure spirit essence, which we call God. Okay. Now, to create the molecular relationship, it's important then that we thoroughly understand these workings of the male-female energy. For no molecule, whether human or atomic, can become stable without this correct interplay. Now, the males and females need to go with their natural flow of energy for maximum balance. Now, think of it this way, of like a stream. In a stream, if you go with the flow, it's much easier to swim or row with the flow of the stream. You can row against the stream maybe if it's not too strong, but it takes a lot of energy. It's so much easier and more efficient to go with the flow. Now the flow, if you find yourself in a male body, it means you have more sending energy than receiving energy. You have both within yourself, but you'll have more sending than receiving. If you're in a female body, you will have more receiving energy than sending energy. And this shows in real life when, for instance, females overall are a lot better students than males. They get significantly better scores, not in just the United States, but throughout the whole world. All the schools throughout the whole world, the females get better grades than the males in school. And why do they get better grades? Because they're better receivers. They can sit there and receive. Now you just look at the difference of males and females in class. You can kind of remember when you're in school, males were often squirming around in their seat and maybe looking out the window and wishing they were out there playing ball. The girls were over there reading their books and listening studiously to the teacher, sitting still. And there's just a total difference in their energies. And so females are really good at receiving. And this is also exemplified in the people the masters have chosen to receive, not only the masters, but also various spirit entities. Think of the great receivers in recent times have been like Alice A. Bailey, received from Dwell Cole, and Madame Blavatsky, Helen Roerich, Helen Sukman received the Course in Miracles. Jane Roberts received the Seth material, which was one of the best regular channels. And now
Lucille Cederkranz.
Yeah, Lucille Cederkranz, all the good receivers. And you might say, well, Edgar Cayce was a good receiver. No, he didn't receive from an entity. He received from his own soul. So he was totally different type of receiver. A male can do that. Now, after Jane Roberts received Seth, there's been 2 or 3 guys claiming to channel Seth. And I've read some of their material, and it doesn't sound like Seth at all. Not nearly as good as Jane Roberts. And I find that the guys that are claimed to be channels just aren't very good. They don't produce that much good of material. But guys that just come up using their own connections with their souls and producing things, they do pretty good that way. But as far as just being a total receiver, it's very difficult for a guy to put himself in a state where I'm just going to be in 100% receivership, because the impulse of the person in the male energy is, man, I want to give stuff out. And so that's interesting to contemplate. So understanding these differences in the males and females is one of the key and core concepts to understanding the molecular relationship. Now, few people have ever contemplated as to why they find themselves in either a male or female body. How about you, Ed? Why do you think you were born a male in this life?
Well, we're born in the body that can best fill our needs.
Yeah,
And we're born into the family who best serves us for our growth.
yeah. So do you feel that you are able to grow more by being a male in this life than if you were a female?
Well, I don't have any comparison to that, but I know that when I was a senior in high school, I started studying metaphysical things and meditating, and I went from a C student to a straight A student because of my meditation.
Really? Well, that's great. So what's interesting about the sexes is we always hear about the battle of the sexes, and sometimes we'll have chauvinistic guys thinking it's males are more important, and then women's rights people thinking females are more important. But the thing about it is there is such a thing as reincarnation. We live many lives, and we've lived many lives as both male and female. Matter of fact, it goes in cycles, and I've taught this before, that there's 7 cycles basically is a female and 7 is a male. And on the 7th cycle, you have a Sabbath life. 6 lives are really hard. And then you get a little bit of break and you have a 7th life that's kind of easy. You might be born to rich parents or something. And every once in a while you meet somebody that says, boy, I don't have any big challenges in my life. I'm wondering if I've really grown or whatever. Well, people that say that are usually like on their Sabbath life, and they should be taking advantage of it and just being relaxing and enjoying that life, because their next life is probably going to be quite a struggle. They're just having a little rest before the big struggle. And the same thing with race. We're all born in all kinds of different races in the past. So if a person is a racist and they think somebody of another race is below them, well, they've probably been that race before. And if they're a racist, well, they will be born in that race in a future life, so they'll understand what it feels like to be attacked that way. So it's important that each one of us look on each of our brothers and sisters as merely a projection of ourselves. The way and the situation and the circumstances and the energy your neighbor is in, you either were once in or you will be. So, and that person is really a reflection of you, and you are a reflection of your soul, and your soul is a reflection of the one God, and there is just one life in the universe, basically, with many different parts. So both sexes are equal in value, and one cannot exist without the other. There's just no such thing as one hand clapping. There's no creation with one sex. They just both have to work together. So how can a person say is one with the universe, yet not have the ability to live in harmony with one other person of the opposite sex, or even his own sex, that by nature he's gravitated toward? Other people are a part of this universe we're in, and oneness with the universe includes other people. So if you can be in harmony and balance with just one other person, and this is what the lesson of marriage is all about. I've been married 3 times myself. We just celebrated our 33rd anniversary, so I guess 3's charm. But it doesn't always work on the first one, but eventually each of us needs to find at least one person they can get along with. Now, if you're not married, well, you have friends or you work with people. Focus on finding one person that you can be one with. And we can do this in the group and on Zoom too. The people here are very much in harmony with everybody else. So it's very nice. That's a good start for us all. But in close relationships, it's quite a bit different than relationships at a distance. Like, let's take, well, let me pick on somebody. Let's pick on old Tyler there. Tyler's looks like an easygoing guy, but let's suppose that Tyler and I were caught in an elevator together and the power went out and we had to spend like 3 days there before we get out of that elevator. After 3 days, I might find Tyler kind of irritating. So I may think, boy, I really like Tyler till I was stuck in the elevator with him for 3 days.
It wouldn't take 3 days. It'd be far less than that.
So it reminds me of when I was on a LDS mission an eternity ago. You're with the same guy for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they switch companions, thank God, about every 6 weeks. So if they didn't do that, I think a lot of missionaries wind up killing each other. But you get a new companion, and the first couple of days you think, oh, got a new companion. He seemed like a pretty nice guy. But then after a while, they start doing things that grates on your nerves. I remember one time I was transferred and I got this new companion. He seemed like just really not sweet guy. And I figured I was going to get along with him great. And as we did our work together, he was often singing songs. And I thought, well, that's nice. He's got a nice voice. But he kept singing. And he loved these Rodgers and Hammerstein songs, which I wasn't particularly fond of. I was a big Beatles fan back in that day. And it was in 1964. But he kept singing and singing. And pretty soon, after about 2 weeks, his singing started driving me crazy, and I was hesitant to criticize him. And finally, I says, now, Elder, that's what we called each other, was Elder. I says, you got a great voice, some nice songs you're singing, but it's about to drive me crazy. Could you please not sing so much? And you know what he said to me? He says, well, this is just who I am. And then he just kept singing. And boy, by the end of 6 weeks, I was so glad to get rid of that guy. But so it's interesting, when you're in a close relationship with somebody, you see things that you don't see when you're in a casual relationship. And so we're picking on Tyler again. In my casual relationship with Tyler, I cannot see anything negative about the guy. It just seemed like a wonderful character. But what if you had to live with the guy 24/7 for a couple months? Then what would you see in the guy? Then that would be the real challenge. That would be the real challenge, to overlook his personality imperfections and look on the soul. And when you can do that, then you made a tremendous inroads. Okay, any comment on what we talked about so far here? Actually, I think Tyler would be a lot easier to get along with than a lot of people. So I didn't mean to pick on you there, Tyler.
I think I'm pretty easygoing.
Yeah, you look like an easygoing guy. And let's pick on somebody that has been through a divorce. Who's all been through a divorce here? Let's see. That may be a little tricky. Well, Annie, you've been through it. Have you've been married in the past, haven't you, Annie?
Twice,
How many times?
2 times, twice.
Been married twice. Well, I can't imagine anyone not staying married to you. You seem even more easygoing than Tyler.
Not so, not so.
What could you possibly done to irritate anybody?
Well, I think they irritated me more. I think I was
It's
the
the
one
other
who
way
left.
around, huh? Okay, let's go to your first husband. Now, you obviously were attracted to him before you married him, right?
Sure.
Okay. So then something changed. Did you see stuff you didn't see before?
Yeah. I didn't see his personality at all. That's true.
Now, what's interesting, and I'm sure you kind of go along with this, is even though you separated, on reflection, you can still see the Christ in him, but it just wasn't practical to stay together. Is that kind of the way you looked at it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. That's how it is. I mean, I still have a very good relationship with my last husband. The first one I really don't know anymore, but that's not out of bad feelings. And
Yeah.
we can see each other and be together for different. I mean, he's a good guy. It's just that it didn't work out because we were very different when it came down to it, and we
Yeah.
didn't share values or interest really. So
Right, right. Just because you see the Christ in people and can overlook their personality doesn't mean it's beneficial for you to actually live with them. It
yeah,
means that you don't let them be responsible for you carrying an emotional burden. So you got to let that pain and disturbance go, realize that the Christ is in that person and see him that way, but that doesn't mean you have to live with them. Because if you live with somebody that's just completely unlike you and unsupportive and everything, then it can interfere with spiritual work you want to do. So, so the main lesson I learned from my relationships that didn't work was to still see the Christ in the person, but sometimes you have to move on in order to fulfill your destiny. Okay. Anybody else have any comment in that direction? So the first step in creating a human molecule is to stabilize the male-female relationship, whether it be through marriage or another type of agreed upon union or any type of interplay. And the prime cause of disharmony is the lack of balance. Now, another thing that creates a problem in the male-female relationships is the female likes to receive. And if the male can send to her, then she will be a lot more satisfied because she likes receiving. Just like, remember we talked about, it's a fact that females are better students. They're better students because they enjoy receiving. They're in their energies when they're receiving. So for a female to be happy, it's important that she connect up with a male that she feels can send her something. And when this happens and he can send and she can receive, then there will be much more stability.
Some females want to be more equal.
Yeah, well, there's an equal sending and receiving now. And this is a point that I need to stress again and again, is we both have both energies within us. And when I've taught this, a lot of people misunderstand it and think, well, I both send and receive. Both males and females will say that, and that is true. But think of the word polarization. Maybe there's some people that don't know what that word means. What does the word polarize mean? Who can tell us? If you're polarized in the male energy, what does that mean?
Like you said, it's more you're sending, you're radiating, and you're in control.
Right, it means you're sending more than you're receiving. And if you're polarized in the female energy, it means you're receiving more than you're sending. And so, so let's look at it this way. And we explained this once before, is that see each male as being, if you're in a male body, you have a charge somewhere between plus 10 to plus 1. If you're in a female body, you have a charge the other direction, minus 1 to minus 10. Okay. If you're minus 10, you're a highly charged female. If you're minus 1, you're near the or near the 0 point, then you're not a highly charged. Maybe you're not sure where you belong. Okay. If you're a plus 10, then you're a highly charged male, like Clint Eastwood would be pretty close to plus 10. He's a very highly charged male. Angelina Jolie is a highly charged female, so she'd be close to 8, 9, or 10, or so on. Ellen DeGeneres would be closer to the 0 point. She's maybe like plus 1 or 2 or something like that. And so the charge of the male female is to be taken in consideration. And so if you're a highly charged female, you are happiest with a highly charged male. If you're like a minus 8, then you have a very strong desire to receive. And so if you hook up to a plus 8, this guy has a high incentive to send. So he sends, you receive, and together you approach close to the 0 point. Now, there are times that males receive and females send. And also in our life, we go through male-female cycles. Whether it doesn't matter if you're male or female, the first half of your life, especially the first Saturn cycle up to age 29, maybe later, you are polarized in the female part of your life. You begin life as a little baby and you totally receive. You're not sending to anybody, except maybe some smiles that entertain people. But you're in almost a total receptive state as a little baby. And as you get older, you receive from your parents and your friends, and then you enter school, you're receiving from your teachers. So up until later on in life, even after college and you graduate, you enter a job. First of all, when you enter a career, you're not very good at it. You have to still continue to learn and receive, so you learn how to do the job correctly. And we often approach the end of our Saturn cycle, which is around the age of 29, before we switch over to the male part of our life. Then when we get everything together, then we start sending. And then we're in the male part of our life. So it doesn't matter if you're male or female, as far as your life cycle as a whole, the first part of your life is a female cycle where you're receiving. The second part of your life is more of a male cycle where you're sending more. And these cycles are the same for both male and females. But within that cycle, you're in a physical body which has a charge of either male or female energy. So when we look at each other as electrical units in life as like electricity and manifestation, it's interesting, especially when you consider DK tells us that compares electricity to life essence itself. And so electricity is has a charge, and even DK even talks about there being negative electricity and positive electricity. And he says, we haven't learned to use positive electricity yet, but will at one time. And some people suspect that may have something to do with atomic energy when he talked about positive electricity. No one's ever clarified that for sure. Okay, that's probably be an interesting place to leave it. Do you have any questions or comments before we sign off? Okay, we're going to get into some interesting things as we move along. And we're, like I say, it won't be long before we get into the governing principles of the molecular relationship, which I think you'll find quite interesting.
Well, I think it's a good thing to think about the realizations that have come to us about this new year and about our study and what we've gotten from life. New realizations come. We've become more aware of something, and it would be good to think about that.
Yeah, and speaking of that year, Ruth asked me to explain the male, female in relation to the year. And I never really thought about it till she asked that question, but 2020 was a very female year. Odd numbers are represent male energy, and even numbers represent female. And 2020, all those numbers are female. And add them up, you get 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0 equals 4. 4 is also an even number, a female number. And so 2020 is an even numbered year. So everything about 2020 is female. And it's not and 2020 isn't bad because it was polarized in female, but because of the excess. I mean, everything about it is centered on one energy, making it extreme on the emotional side. And it was a very emotional year. I mean, there were riots and everybody was out of control, emotion, with no male energy to set it straight. Now, the same can happen with years where there's too much male energy. That would be, we'd likely go into some type of war when that happens. But so now 2021 is a little bit different. It's an odd year, and 2021 adds up to 2 plus 1 is 3. So and it's got 2 2s in, so it's more balanced. 2021 has both male and female numbers in it. So hopefully it's going to be more of a balanced year, but time will tell. We can even take balance and screw it up as flawed human beings that we are.
What's your prediction for the year? Do you need some time to think about that?
Well, it's even if the election were fraudulent as Trump claims, it would, we're at that point, it would probably create more harm than good to overthrow the election, because there would be riots in the street like you wouldn't believe. But at least we don't have rioting over this election, and there probably will still be a lot of unrest out there. Both Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell both had their houses spray painted, and a pig's head was left at Nancy Pelosi's house because both of them resisted giving out more money to the people, and a bunch of people unhappy with that. But as far as the year as a whole, I think I think it'll be a reasonable year. There will be a lot of political stuff that a lot of people don't agree with, but a lot of stuff I won't agree with, I'm sure. But I think it will be manageable unless there's something unforeseen, and that can always come out of the woodwork. You know, maybe North Korea does something crazy or something like that.
I think the pandemic is going to continue until the population can come to some neutral point of balance.
Yeah, one thing that bothers me about this mask wearing is I think after the pandemic is under control, there's going to be a bunch of people want to continue to wear masks to protect us from the flu, measles, and everything else that's out there. And I hope that doesn't happen. Because
Well, they wear masks in Japan all the time because of cold and flu.
they do even without a pandemic.
Well, they had before.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yes,
Anyway,
they do, JJ. I know someone who lives there. And when people go out in public, they wear masks. And this was before the pandemic.
really, I did not realize that. Now in China, some places where there's a lot of smog and stuff, I understand they wear masks out there just to protect them from the air pollution. And sometimes, but that at least makes some sense.
Well, what I'm saying is that we have a pollution of the human consciousness, the battle of the minds and the battle of hearts of the people that I think is the cause of all this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we sign off? You've been a good group today, and we will see you next Sunday at 10 a.m., all being well, Mountain Standard Time.
Just one more time, everybody. Happy New Year.
Oh, yeah. Happy New Year,
Healthy.
everybody. I forgot to wish everybody Happy New
Happy
Year.
and prosperous.
Well, let's hope it's a good year. It can't be much worse. Well, we shouldn't say that. It could always be worse. But hopefully it's a lot better.
Thanks, JJ.
And not even the masters can predict the future 100%. There's several times that DK even says the hierarchy was caught unaware or unprepared for certain things. And so that's kind of interesting. And this is one of the things that I've taught is that, you know, nobody knows the complete future. We can guess pretty good when we examine the cycles, but to pin down everything that's going to happen is difficult. But it looks like next year is going to be more peaceful than this year. Let's hope so. So we'll see you next week.